take a look at, we'll do a little recursion. Yes. Turn these lights off.
All right, see you guys.
Take care. All right, so I want to just go through a very basic example of two different ways that we could do recursion on flattening an array. So, let's say that let me actually raise this up here for a sec. Let's make sure these folks could hear us. Okay. So, what we're going to do here is I'm going to create. Now, so have you guys, I don't know if I've used this at all. This is JS bin. So JS bin just allows you to have HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and look at the output. I'm just using it really for the JavaScript here. But it's good because you can bring in other libraries pretty easily. So what I'm going to do here is let's say that I have this array. And so I've got this, I'm going to call it data. And I'm going to start out with it being flat. Okay. Let's say that we have this function called flatten. We want to put an array into flatten, and we want flatten to return an array. So we're going to go in here, we're going to pass an array in. And, as a starting point, we could say for I equals 0, I less than array dot length, I plus plus. And we could go in here and we could create a results array. And we could say results dot push ARRI. Right? And we could return results. And when we do that, if we said console.log flatten data, and we went to run this, right, we would see our array. We expect that. Now, let's take an example now where things are a little different. Let's say that we have a 2 and a 3 here.
Can I say something for a second?
Sure.
So what did you do in that example?
Oh, nothing, really. All I did was basically loop over the array and create another array.
Okay.
It's a silly example. Yeah. But let's say, by the way, can people see this? Jason, you want to make it bigger? It's all right. A little bigger? Okay, so let's say that we decided to run this. Okay, that's not what we're looking for. We want to flatten this. So one thing that we can do here is that we really only want to push our elements, right? We only want to push our elements if, in fact, what we're pushing is, and really one thing we could do here is we could start out by going over here and saying if array I, and let's use our array is array, and I'll actually do the opposite here. Okay. So if this is not an array, then push it, and this will be our starting point. Now, if we run this, it's going to be flat, but we ended up getting rid of that second element. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do recursion. Okay? So let's take this simple case of we know that we have a method. We can give it an array, that second element. We know we have a method that we can call that'll end up flattening that array. Okay? And the key here is that method is actually the method that we're in. And that method will end up giving us a new array. Okay? So we could go one level deep here and say, well, how about otherwise, if we say, hey, look, take our results and let's concat to that a flattened version of array I. Now, we got a problem. All right, let's just see what happens when we run this. Same thing. Now, the problem that we have here is just sort of think about, we've got two call stacks that we're going into. So the first time that we go through here, we have this array, which is our result. That's what's going to get returned. Okay? The first time that we go in here, we created this results array, that's what will get returned. When we end up going in here, we start adding things to it, and then we make it down here and we call flattening it. Okay? We go into a different call stack. We end up creating a new array. Okay? We end up coming down here, we end up pushing our two results into that array, and we end up returning that array, okay? In which case, we have a new array here. The problem that we have is that concat doesn't change an array. The way that concat is written, concat gives you a new array. So what will solve this problem? And I could think of at least 3 ways to do this, but what will end up solving this problem is to say, hey, look, my renew results, okay, this results that I have, I'm going to take what I had before, and I'm going to concatenate these two things together, and I'll have a new array, and I'll assign it to results. Take our simple case, okay? We go back into this call stack, we get our new array, we end up flattening it, we now have a new array, we concat in here, that gives us a new array, we assign it to our results and we return it, and this should be correct, which it is, right? Now, we can think of a couple of different ways. So does everyone see why you have to do that? Again, the whole rationale here is that, you know, we didn't do anything. We created this results array that we're returning, and aside from pushing the things on it, concatenating it doesn't change it. Okay? So there's probably a couple of different things you could do here, different ways to handle this. I guess one thing you could probably also, I was also thinking, well, how about if you did something like, this is another example. So you could flatten this if you wanted to, and then maybe, I'm trying to think of a better name for this. This is, flatten. I mean, I don't really care for it that much, but if you wanted to go about doing it this way, you could say for VAI equals 0, I less than flatten.length, I plus plus, and you might be able to just, at this point, say results.push flattened I. Might work. Let's see. I'm not that crazy about this, but let's just see. Yeah, it doesn't look too good. Okay. So let's forget about that. There is actually one other way to do it. So let's make sure this is working. And where's my token? Here. So that works. Let's just make sure we can even go a level deeper, right? Okay, that works too. So another option that you have that you could do, and I mean, this really is almost exactly what you had when you were traversing the DOM, right? Where again, concat doesn't. I mean, if you had a method that modified the array, it wasn't concat, you wouldn't necessarily have to do results equal. There's one other thing that you can do. So if you wanted to, what you could do is and you could say results equals results or an empty array. And so you could go in here and instead of concatenating here, you could go in here. Just think about this for a second. So you could pass in, if you're doing that, let's just think for a sec here. A pattern array I and pass in results. Again, just think about it just going down 2 levels, right? Again, you have an array and you have another array as one of those elements. Right? This totally works because again, it's not, you're not going, every time you go to the call stack, you're not creating a new result set. You're adding to it. So this might feel a little bit better to do. And this would end up getting you the same results. So either one of those will end up working. But again, the whole idea is that you're going to, need to take into account, that what your original results is. Again, here. Now, again, if you have control over the signature of how this thing is being called, or I should say, really, if you have control over the signature, then you could do this. But this will work. I mean, this would work. If this was a test that you were running, this would end up passing that test. Does that help at all? A little bit. I don't know. I think again, looking at things like this, you could look at examples. Another one is, again, they're all sort of variations of this theme, but if in fact, for me, if I could just think about it going down one level, that you could go down as many levels as you want, right? Every time that it goes through here, again, we're never pushing anything to our result. We only have one results array, and we're never pushing anything to it unless that thing is not an array, right? We're only pushing individual elements to it. Any questions about that?
I think setting results to results or empty array,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of like expands my horizon as to what you can use recursion for. Because a lot of times I feel like I can't use recursion
Because you can't pass something, you can't start off with that first case.
exactly. I would just reset my results every
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If I look at this and sort of see, I don't know if this reads better than the other one. I don't know. I mean, you get into the same results. You sort of imagine now you've gone in with your second bag, there's another array in there, right? It's just going to end up, going in there again when it's going in with the same array. I mean, maybe if there was something that, look, I can think of scenarios where, depending on how you would want to flatten these things or something like that, that might determine what kind of method you end up using. But if you just want to make sure that you're hitting all these elements, that'll end up hitting all those elements recursively. So I'm going to stop this broadcast and just do one more really quick.